Thank you so much for that. And over to you, Minister. You've been in the role for a couple of months now.
Yes.
And would love to hear about your sort of visions for apprenticeships and addressing some of the questions that we've had here on lower numbers and how we can boost uptake.
I'm interested first. Michaela, have you got a Google phone?
That's mine.
Yes.
Yes, I know you have, yeah. She's hiding it away, but we want to see the proof. Well, I mean, first of all, I know that some of the media in here this is hot off the press. This week we just announced it's our first prisoner apprenticeships, and I've got confirmation of this about an hour ago, and this week of prisoners will actually be training with Green King, James Cobbler, and the Kia Group, which I think is fantastic. I think this is an excellent way to break that the cycle of reoffending, and it also helps to boost our skills needs. So I think that's quite an exciting way. I'm very much behind reform because we've seen it's such a high. When you look at, I know I'm going off a slight tangent, but when we look at those in prison, it's quite often care leavers, those who are from deprived backgrounds, and I think giving them an opportunity to really reform their life, I think this is great news. Now, we have got good news on apprenticeships since 2010, without a doubt. We know since lockdown it really did, it didn't pause it, but it really slowed things down, because I think businesses, especially, they want to show how the economy was going to be coming out of lockdown, etc. There wasn't necessarily investing in those areas, so they slightly lost confidence really to invest in those areas because of external circumstances. Now, I agree with what Dania, is it?
Yeah.
Donia, and Richard said, and those who's been to the previous events yesterday on similar topics would have heard me say the same. It is about the prestige. And I've repeated myself here, but it's some new people in the audience. I've always got frustrated about the snobbery regarding the academic routes, really, and tend to look down on those more technical vocational qualifications. And I think really we've actually got to change the PR of them, not only with parents, but with teachers at schools, with academia and society in general, because it is a great way. And I think we also need to understand people's learning styles, either visual, either auditory, either kinesthetic. I prefer the kinesthetic doing, so an apprenticeship, would have been great for me as I was a school leaver. So back to the prestige though, the stars in, we've how many times, I mean, my dad was a madcap inventor, how many times have we seen people who didn't do the traditional degree route and they've done amazing things, and I think we need to promote this entrepreneurial spirit really at a young age as well. Now, what I think we need to do is clearly the skills gaps, and what I'm very much behind is apprenticeships definitely business-led, and we've gone a long way to ensure that is. But we also must ensure that we look at new emerging businesses, new emerging technologies, and we engage them early on in the business cycle to make sure we're really upskilling our economy for the future. I think that's a key part for me as well, so that our young people are learning the skills for tomorrow. Another area regarding regional skills, I'd love to visit your college, Richard, actually.
I can't wait.
You have to give me the name of it again.
So, well, honestly, Minister, I had Alex Burghardt up there last year, so I'd be delighted to have you up this year.
Always great to sort of visit places where, they are doing a great job, which we can share the best practice. But another thing that really interests me is how do we know that when mayoral combined authorities, local government, quite often the money's not ring-fenced, it's not targeted. So to me, how can we actually upskill our economy and look at regional variations if we don't actually look at this? Our local authorities, our mayors actually, doing justice to the skills agenda. So I think that is we need to see some transparency really at where the money's being spent. you know, we don't want it spent for political reasons if it's not ring-fenced. We want it to go to the skills, what's really needed in that area. I mean, I met with a business earlier. I had a meeting with a business who is a fashion manufacturer, and he was actually saying to me, I mean, he mentioned the apprenticeship levy, and he actually mentioned, do we actually look in some of the benefits of businesses through R&D as a route to be able to fund apprenticeships? So I'm all for actually looking at, you know, how can we improve the apprenticeship levy or just slightly tweak it to make it work even more. So I'm all ears if people's got some suggestions on this. But what he was saying to me was that there's so many degrees out there for the fashion industry, as in fashion design, but very little jobs. But he finds it hard to get people with the skills needed to go into fashion manufacturing. And really, you know, I'm a Brexiteer, as a few people might know, as Richard is too. So these post-Brexit opportunities, I think it's important. You know, we should have these skills within our UK economy, and so it's vital that we train our workforce. As part of my brief, I will be really trying to hone down on, you know, where are the skills gaps? Where are the skills gaps of tomorrow? I've got a question for you, actually. I was quite surprised. I mean, Google, you know, the Google Garage thing is amazing. And have you had one in your area yet, Richard?
No.
You've got to do it. It's amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll be coming to a town near you.
But just a question for Michaela is, why did you choose the NHS to do your levy transfer? Because they're a big organisation anyway, which is taxpayer funded. Why not give it to the small SMEs?
The BBC.
Oh, sorry, I meant the BBC.
Yes,
the BBC,
yeah.
sorry, yeah.
So they came to us with the proposal.
Okay.
They said,
well, I guess they would, because they want more money.
We're going
Yes.
to come up with this scheme. We're going to
Yeah.
do it in the West Midlands. You
Okay.
know, it's on creative SMEs. It ticks the boxes for us in terms of levy transfer. We also do levy transfer with Multiverse, and we also do that with Media Trust as well.
Yeah, no. Well, can I ask that you also reach out to the small SMEs, because they're the ones who really do struggle. So for a big company.
Let's definitely have a conversation about that.
That'd be
something
brilliant.
I can't announce. But
No,
that'd
that'd
be
be wonderful if we can get big companies behind the little SMEs.
Thank you so much.
Because I think the small SMEs, I mean, my dad had a small business, I've had a small business before, they can learn a lot from big organisations, and I'd love to see stronger partnership and mentoring in that area. Now, regarding Dania's point, I think I've spelled it wrong, pronounced it wrong again, haven't I? On literacy and numeracy, I have to disagree on that, because we've gone backwards as a country on literacy and numeracy. And so I think if we didn't have that element, we could take our eye off the ball, especially with adult apprenticeships as well. So that's one thing I wouldn't necessarily like to, you know, loosen the ties on, if I'm honest with you. But I would like to see, I mentioned yesterday, I'd like to see apprenticeships on nursing. I mean, I've spoke to people in that, I was speaking to a couple of people from the BMA yesterday and say, look, why are we having degrees for nursing? You know, why can't we start off at apprenticeship level? They might not be able to go for the high level grade of nurse first, but they could. But it's a foot in the door into the NHS, into that healthcare. You know, why can't we even look at routes with that? I mean, we've seen as well that dentistry. You know, I mean, you can start off as some. I don't know the dentistry. Is there any dentists in the room? No.
Small pool.
Yes, absolutely. We've, as Richard will know, and probably everybody in the audience will know, it's very hard to get a dentist appointment, isn't it? So we need more dentists. And what actually can we do, whether it's T-level, whether it's apprenticeships, what can we do to actually get the next generation of dentists you know, being trained up as well? So, I mean, I'd like to sort of finish really on a quote from Apprentice in my office. I've had two apprentices in my office. Brandon, he went on to decide to go on to university then, and he's got a very good job now. But Dominic, now I asked him for a quote for today, and his honestly is a real gem, and he's amazing. And he said to me, being an apprentice, working for me, myself, means that you're accepted in the team, you learn on the job while getting qualifications. To me, this is the important bit, to me that makes it easier, as academic studies are something sometimes of a struggle for me. He found schooling even a struggle, so this was a great route for him. Whereas being an apprentice, you are working and learning, it doesn't just teach you, but it helps you adapt to everyday working life. He said, I was proud to be given this opportunity, and he feels he's come a long way from where he started. And so I just think that it's such a great social mobility lever, and I think it's something that whatever level of government, whatever business, whether it's an SME or large corporation, it's something we must get behind.
Brilliant, thank you so much. If it's all right, I might start and press you on this question of SMEs, because some of the research that we've done has found the fall in apprenticeship starts is really closely associated with SMEs struggling to hire apprentices. They're also more likely to hire young apprentices and outside of sort of London and the South East. So I just wanted to press you on what you think the levers are to help apprentices, to help SMEs. It's often quite administrative, but if there's more simple things or maybe change to the levy system, that might be the way forward.
I mean, I think it's got to be seen as a partnership. That's the important thing, that it's you can't have one without the other, and so the input from both the business as well as the education provider is vitally important. Now, yes, we need to make sure it's not an administrative burden, without a doubt. We want it as simple as possible, because quite often SMEs, like I was when I had my own business, you wear many hats. You're the marketing person, you do the payroll, you do delivery, you do everything. So I think it's the time element which often puts people off. So I think quite a streamlined process. It might be quite an online form which makes it easy, and then the provider will work with you to then get this up and running very quickly. I think that's definitely an element. But also, like I said earlier, it's very much about the PR. I mean, businesses need to know what's in it for them, especially SMEs when they are struggling wearing these 10 different hats that they wear. So I think that by actually working on the PR and working closer with businesses, I think it's important, even at, like I said, local authority level, colleges as well, that we actually show that, you as an engineering firm there, when your people retire, who's going to replace them? Where are you going to find these skills, or the digital skills? I mean, you're completely right, Michaela. Even in the last 7 years, I've been an MP. I've heard it so many times from businesses that cannot get enough people with digital skills. And I mentioned, actually, sorry for taking up yesterday in my speech, young people actually now, I think they're going to demand so much more technically and digitally. I mean, my 5-year-old, he set up a YouTube channel. When he was 4, he made music videos, me drooling on my pillow asleep, added music to it. It's amazing. And maybe he can work for Google one day. But it's amazing. And so I think that, we'll be letting these next generation down if we don't get up to speed with these digital skills. And we saw that in lockdown, for example, laptops, not enough laptops to go around to help those hard to reach families. Local authorities being slow at actually getting them out. So it's probably, I've over-answered your question.
It's very interconnected, right?
Yes,
you've got 2 sides. Rich, can I come to you on this question on how we improve the number of businesses, particularly SMEs, and help them to hire apprentices, whether that's levy reforms or something else?
I think it is levy reforms, but there's something I actually want to just press. I can just digress from momentarily, Andrew, but one of the things that I'm really keen on pushing for early years is, and perhaps for infants and primary education as well, the Department of Education probably transfers around 200 million quid back to the Treasury every year in its own apprenticeship levy funding. And I just wondered, in terms of perhaps upskilling teaching assistants perhaps, and at other level, and at early years, some of those people as well. Is there any look at degree apprenticeships or route like that for teaching as well? Because actually there's a lot of those small, they're quite small, schools aren't necessarily massive as individual entities, and there's clearly a lot of expertise within them, which could perhaps be utilised.
This is actually now we've only discussed in the last 2 weeks, which you'd be pleased to know.
I am very pleased to hear that. That's
Definitely.
good. Well, my Westminster Hall debate, I think we're going to be answering at some point in the not too distant future. No, but with small businesses, I think it is that the barriers are exactly as was talked about before. Actually, it's that bureaucracy. Even if you're going to pay something towards it, a small nudge of an incentive goes a long way. Getting some, and so I just think that's what we just have to do something in that space. It's small incentive nudges. They want to do the right thing. All my small businesses in North West want to do the right thing. Absolutely. It's just, they think, oh, there's a bureaucracy, we've got to pay something towards it. A little bit of a grant goes a long way to helping them. And also, I think...
Or a helping hand. It's not always a grant, a helping hand through the process.
And I think sometimes one of the difficulties with that is they just don't know where to turn. And good local colleges, like the one I've got in my patch, are really good at working with business on this. A lot of them will have worked with them on access to work schemes and all sorts of different stuff. And if they've got that trust there with them, they're more likely to. So it's about that, and sometimes just the knowledge of what to do, because they are desperate as well. So many businesses in my patch are desperate for people to come in who they can actually train up, and we all know from apprentices they're more likely to stick with them if they've done an apprenticeship.
And I have to, if this is okay, Chair, pick up on the point actually about the importance of that relationship with local colleges, because when I contacted one of our local colleges for my own apprentice in the office, we didn't get a response or even an email responded to, so we went with a private provider. And that can be, why is that happening? It'd be nice to visit that college now. Why did you ignore?
There are some excellent private providers out there.
There's amazing private providers. The company we've got is amazing. I had him at my recent jobs fair as well. And there's the strengths to both of them, definitely. What I like about him, the local business, they really spend a lot of time and come into the office and spend a lot of time and spend time with ourselves as employers.
It's just one of the small things. I think and this is changing, and what Multiverse and others are doing. It's incredible in this space, genuinely incredible in the space. But there is we can also look at that prestige point as well. And for some businesses, they want to see themselves as graduate employers almost, rather than. And I think there's a bit of an issue with that in certainly parts of the public sector, particularly. Where actually, why? Why would you do that? If Goldman Sachs or somebody else is doing this other thing with degree apprenticeships or apprenticeship routes, why aren't you? It's almost a bit of backward thinking. It's like some elements of the public sector are still catching up in some ways.
So is it the name? I'm putting it out to all of you. Is it the name that's the problem, apprenticeship? Everybody knows what it does on the tin. Do we need to look at a name which is more inspiring?
I think there might need to be more than the name. But
yes.
there's,
no, obviously more than a name, but I'm just saying...
It's a challenge as well. You've had universities that have been around for hundreds of years. People know what a university education is, and there's a thing. There's a difference in just awareness as well. I'd like to come to some questions from the floor. I might do two at a time. We've got about 15 minutes. So I'll do this gentleman here, and then I'll do the person right at the back as well. And please say who you are.
Is it aimed at me, Sean?
It is. And it's Shane, by the way, not Sean.
Oh, yeah. Shane, I can read it.
Steve yesterday.
Oh, Steve, it's Sean, and it's Shane.
You get it right sometimes. Shane Child, I'm the editor at FD Week, we're a weekly newspaper covering the further education and skills sector. I do want to just press you, Minister, if I can, on comments in the Chancellor's speech yesterday. Comes back to what you were just discussing. He said there are too many rules for small business owners who want to take on an apprenticeship. Clearly there are discussions going on in government, and I'm just wondering if you can give us some more info on, if not what the precise details are, but at least what the processes are, what the thinking is at the moment, because clearly for it to make the Chancellor's speech, it must be a big deal. And secondly, because I don't think I'm going to have another opportunity to at this conference, just wanted your reflections on the proposal that the Labour Party announced last week, where they said they would replace the apprenticeship levy with a skills and growth levy, which could be spent on apprenticeships, but also on other forms of training, which they say would be more flexible and meet the needs of businesses better than the current system.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And at the back.
Hello, I'm Vanessa Wilson, University of London. We met during the summer for the level 3 results. Thank you for the panel's discussion. Just a couple of points really, and then a question. So I represent professional technical universities across the UK, so the executive side. They already work hand in glove with industry, so there are universities out there already doing an incredible job, and they all deliver degree apprenticeships. They'd love to deliver more degree apprenticeships, and it's an offer really, Andrea, that we're working with your predecessor. We think we've got lots of ideas for how we can get more degree apprenticeships, particularly aimed at SMEs. So just an offer just to say we'd love to pick up the conversation with you. The other point I'd like to make is I think when we talk about degrees and people maybe making the wrong decisions, I don't think we should denigrate degrees and undergraduate degrees. I think possibly the real issue is around information, advice and guidance being available for young people when they're making those decisions. So, and I think the question is, what are we, and I think it ties with your point around degree apprenticeships and apprenticeships, is what are we going to do to improve that information, advice and guidance so young people, and indeed older people, make better decisions potentially that work in their favour.
Brilliant, thank you. So Minister, I'm going to go to you on this question of sort of regulation on SMEs and how we can make it easier. And then I might come to Donia on the question of a flexible skills levy and what that might look like, and then we can turn to you both as well.
Shame. I have to say I've had 2 hours sleep, 11 hours on my feet yesterday. I was so hyper, when you can't sleep with insomnia. So, but I'll always get your name wrong because I'm terrible at names as well. Look, I can't say what's going on, what discussions the Chancellor's having in his department. We do have bilateral meetings, the SOS and him, etc. But I haven't been party to those yet. But I know as a department, speaking to not only the civil servants but Kit and the rest of the team, we do want to unshackle businesses to be able to really take on more apprenticeships. So I'd say watch this space because it's something I know it's cliche saying that, but it's something I know the SOS and myself are really passionate about because it's vital. It's a no-brainer. This we've got to make it easier for businesses to take on more apprenticeships. We've got to realise they know what's in it for them and that there's an incentive to do so. So regarding your Labour Party, skills growth levy, it's going to be devil in the detail. I can't comment on that until I've obviously seen the fine detail. But it's always easy to come up with things when you're in opposition anyway. It's much harder when you're having to juggle all the purse strings, wars, pandemics at the same time. So.
Great, thanks. And Donia, can I come to you on this question of the flexible skills levy? You've worked with the apprenticeship levy and with employers. Do you think this is something that employers would welcome, or would it potentially add sort of more confusion to a system which actually people are only just starting to grapple with?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you just said. And the second part is that we think that there have been a lot of calls for flexibility, and that the Labour Party announced that they would announce a flexibility scheme. But as Andrea said, the devil's in the detail, and particularly we're worried about the regulation and the quality of those short courses, whatever they are, and we've got quite a robust quality mechanism and regulation scheme for apprenticeship qualifications, where Ofsted inspected, etc. So I think there's important guardrails to put up when we're looking at short-term courses, and we need to make sure that these courses aren't used for things like inductions or health and health training at work. Things that actually contribute to growth will be really important. And finally, I think a big part of levy underspend goes to SMEs, directly to SMEs to do apprenticeship training. So we would want to see a commitment to SMEs getting the same amount of funding that they get under this scheme to ensure that they are able to grow.
Thank you, and I actually agree with a lot of your points. But can I ask you this question again on the sort of levy and the reforms that might sort of help the system?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think it's so telling as well. Thank you, Richard, for coming and being on the panel at very short notice. I know it's been a particular passion of yours, and also to the new minister as well to come and right in and to have that hit the ground running and to join us today, we would be delighted to work with you on how we can, ourselves kind of in depth of how we've managed through the apprentices ourselves and meeting some of our apprentices, but then also working on how we'd like to spend more of our apprenticeship levy.
I mean, I've mentioned
how we can do that with
several times at the conference so far, but I'm going to be having monthly stakeholder meetings where it's out the box thinking, looking at what problem is and how can it be solved for people right across industry. And so I can see you smiling wanting to do it.
Now.
No, but isn't it better, because to me, as I've said previously, the DFE doesn't have a monopoly on good ideas. Isn't it the right thing to actually engage everybody?
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
I wasn't in the post prior to 2 months ago, so give me a chance.
Richard, can I come to you on this question of degree apprenticeships and information? You've already touched on it a little bit, but if you'd like to come with that question.
Yeah, I think, first of all, Vanessa, I want to get in touch with you about Teesside University, because one of my local colleges is desperate to find a degree apprenticeship link up, so let's chat at the end. Secondly, I think you're being a bit generous sometimes on elements of undergraduate degrees. I think there are some fantastic undergraduate degrees out there. That's absolutely clear. One of the things that was also clear to me when I was in the spell in DFE is that Ofsted ratings go from, you've got 4 Ofsted ratings, 2 of which are basically acceptable and 2 of which are unacceptable. When degree courses are rated, everyone's a winner. Everyone's rated gold, silver or bronze. I think the truth is there probably needs to be a bit more of a push in the sector, and the sector needs to be held to account a bit more, if I was to be totally honest.
Can I come in on that point?
Yeah,
because I've got the same views on this, Richard. But to me, it's actually outcomes of those courses, and we know that next year universities are meant to actually publish what the likely outcome for these individual courses. And I think that we need to do a lot more informing the students. I think UCAS can play a role on letting students also know, this course, is it going to be value for money? Is it going to lead to a good economic outcome for you personally? I think we actually need to blow the lid off this and actually put all the information out there, because if students are going to be saddled with 30 grand of debt, they need to make sure it's 30 grand well spent. So we'll have to have a chat about this, Richard.
I'm delighted to hear, Vanessa, that things are progressing in this area. The one thing I would just wanted to say about prestige, and it was something that James cleverly said when he was briefly Secretary of State to me, of Education to me, when we were chatting a couple of months ago. And he said, we do have massive prestige courses in the UK, already essentially in vocational education. We've got some of the best medical training in the world, which is vocational courses. We have Sandhurst, which provides some, which literally, the world's royal families send their kids to get trained. Why don't we talk about that in the same way? Absolutely. There is terrific vocational education out there, which is world leading and is prestigious. It's just, and thanks to actually what some of the companies have been doing here, that's now happening more broadly. But actually, we've got a great tradition of doing this here, which is a tradition which is at least as strong as some of our good universities, and so we should also be talking about in that context as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I will come to this gentleman here who's been waiting very patiently, and then this lady here as well.
Thank you. Nick Lakin from Kingfisher, so we're in B&Q and Screwfix in this country. I agree with what the panel is saying there. A couple of observations. On the apprenticeship levy, you could sit there and brainstorm it further, but I think there's been an awful lot of feedback from business over the last 5 years or so about what's wrong with the levy. So I think it's almost like you just need to kind of sit down, grab all that feedback, and then really crank it through, rather than spend a lot of time brainstorming further on it.
Can I have your card when we leave?
Sure. Then specifically around tradespeople, so Screwfix, Serves for Trade, there's been a drop between 5 and 30% in the numbers in trades over the last 3 years for a number of different reasons. We've done a large piece of research about tradespeople and what are the challenges and barriers to becoming an apprentice. There's 3 main things. Number 1, there is definitely a point about funding and cost. There's just no way escaping that. If you're a small business, I think you already just said it as well, the confidence of taking on somebody else, and particularly in a more economically insecure environment, is a real barrier. It used to be £3,000 post-COVID, support for apprentices has gone down to £1,000 again. So I know speaking to tradespeople directly, that's a challenge. Second point is around connection, how to connect apprentices and tradespeople. They look in different places to find each other. So I think there's maybe a role for government to help in that. And then finally, there is absolutely a piece around the education scheme of the system and the role of DFE through careers advice and everything else in driving that. I do also think that given university costs, speaking as someone who's taken on someone in my team who's got 65 grand's worth of debt, I think universities will price themselves out of the market increasingly, so apprenticeships become viable.
Is it a question or is it just a point?
There's a series of
discussion
observations and an ask for kind of an encouragement to act pacily, please, in trying to driving these changes, because the clock is really ticking on this.
I used to work for the Kingfisher Group, by the way, for Comet. I was a store manager when you had Comet.
And we can compare notes on that.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the point around prestige, which has been made brilliantly by all the panel. What we're trying to do, sorry, I'm Emma Roberts from World Skills UK. What we try and do is use international best practice and international skills competitions to raise standards in technical education and apprenticeships right across the UK. And I think that's a great opportunity to show that there is prestige and there's real quality and world-class standards within the technical education sector. And ask the panel if they would get behind Team UK over the next couple of months, because we have 35 amazing young people who are going to be flying the flag for UK, competing internationally over the next couple of months in areas like digital skills, which are going to be vital for Google. And just today, 4 of our young people are in Germany competing in mechatronics and Industry 4. Which is just an amazing opportunity. And what's more, when they come back to the UK, they are the role models that will inspire the next generation. So it'd be great to have the panel support.
Brilliant. Minister, I'll let you come to Beth.
Can I have your card as well? I'm going to need a new handbag to carry on. I completely will be fully behind Team UK. Excited to have a chat about that, how I can get involved and promote it. The world skills side, I find it, with your organisation. I think looking at best practice is so important. Through conversations today, I understand Germany is doing some amazing thing, and the way that they look at vocational and technical education is equally as important as the way they look at academia, and even the way that they have their colleges and universities. And even I understand they even get employers to sponsor degrees as well and training, which is amazing. So that so they can have a degree without having any debt. So I'd be interested to meet with you actually and hear your views with your organisation. Who is doing a great job out there? What can we learn? How can we adapt to do something similar in the UK?
That's great. And gentleman at the back, and then the man here as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Martin Coles, Chief Executive of the Marine Society and Sea Cadets. The Marine Society is a college delivering education for seafarers. 2 years ago, we started delivering apprenticeships in line with Maritime 2050 in some of the fringe areas of commercial vessel skippers, workboat crew and port operatives. Wow. We have about 40. It's not big, but it's growing and there's massive demand. Our challenge is that we are being hit, or about to be hit, by the 75% maximum or minimum level of direct delivery that we need to do. And we've been expanding by working in partnership with other providers in order to deliver the full education. Now we can apply and we can get a short term, but can we please move to it being not 25%, but perhaps 50%, to enable that sort of flexibility, so that we can really deliver for the people in that sector.
Great, thank you. And question here.
David Barker, Association of Apprentices. So we were founded in 2019 to tackle a serious problem, which is the number of young people that drop out of apprenticeships. It was about a third when we were starting, that's nearly a half. The number one reason that's been researched why is not having enough support during their apprenticeship. So we've been created to augment more support in partnership with employers and providers. I guess the question is, what more could we do in partnership to scale up that kind of support? Because if we do want to accelerate how many apprentices there are, we've got to accelerate how much support there is available as well.
Great question. Okay, now I'll come to you on these two questions, and then we'll go to the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think going back to that kind of prestige point, I think For us at Google, we see having our apprentices as a prestige for us and within our workforce. And when we do come to North West Durham and do a Google Garage, you will get to meet Callum, who's one of our apprentices who will have been promoting the event on our behalf. And in terms of thinking about how we, looking at whether we know that we're doing a good apprenticeship programme, is in, we have two indicators. One of them being, do the apprentices continue and do they complete? And the other being, where do they then go on to? And both of those numbers are in the very high 90s, which we kind of use as that. And then I thought I hadn't mentioned previously, but in terms of looking at us within Europe, Google UK's apprenticeship programme, it's the largest apprenticeship programme that Google offers within Europe, and it's the third largest within the world. So we really are. And there's a lot of work to be done. Very happy to work in partnership with the government, but I think perhaps kind of see that we know that apprentices work here, and we know that it does have the backing of the government department as well.
Great, thank you. And one final we're very low on time, but if you want to come back on these questions, and then we'll wrap up.
I just want to make one point about something else, but go to this first.
Okay, Donia, these two questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, we don't have a view on the Marine Society particular issue, so I am sorry, I won't be able to answer that one. But in terms of the support and when it comes to retention, we see at Multiverse we've got over a 90% retention rate, which we're quite proud of. And I think a big reason for that is exactly right in terms of support and sort of the one-to-one coaching support that our apprentices receive. But a big portion of it is that we think that the apprenticeships are in an ecosystem, so working with the apprentice, their line manager or their apprentice manager and their wider people and their employers is incredibly important. So one of the things that we do is we really take a long time to measure from very early on apprentice engagement, their manager's engagement, the employer's engagement. And if we see that those engagement numbers are dipping below a certain level, then our coaches are empowered to go into those organizations and speak to people to say, what's the issue? Is there a particular problem that you might be having? How can we fix it? And I think that's what's led us to have really successful retention rate. And what's more is that we've been able to scale it as well, and that's a big part of that is just by data and being able to collect, evaluate, and sort of look at all this data on a repeated way.
Great, thank you. And final word to you, Minister, on these questions.
Okay, Marine Society. I mean, my grandfather was a fisherman in Hull, so anything to do with the seas is important to me. But I can't answer your question. I don't know enough about your industry specific at the moment, but I will get back to you on this. I will get the department to give me a briefing and get some stats on this and see how we can support with that. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. How do we ensure that young people stick with apprenticeships? Because proof's in the pudding. Everybody on this panel agrees it really helps with social mobility and life chances of that person. So I think again, it's going to be collective working, government, local government, businesses, and those in education to run this.